If you want to be a good archaeologist, you gotta get out of the library. I gotta channel my inner Indiana Jones for this one, guys. We'll just roll with what we got as we delve into the discoveries of the ancient Egyptian pyramids. There's just something about finding relics deep within a pyramid that really gives me that These artifacts that were found are called the Dixon Relics, which were named after an adventurer and not an archaeologist named Wayneman Dixon, dating back all the way to 1872. He had accidentally found them in the pyramid of Khufu, and it contained a hook, a granite ball, and a short rod that they were speculating was made of cedar. These were brushed off as anything significant, however, while Dixon and his partner Dr. James Grant thought that they were left behind by some careless workers. The ball was guessed to be used as some sort of hammer, and that the rod and hook were used for a completely unrelated tool. So, because of what was seemingly uninteresting trio of facts, Dixon passed it down to his family, only for the family to then resurface these artifacts in 1972 when they gave them away to a British museum. They were then hidden again until 1993, and mysteriously the rod was never brought back to see the light of day. Researchers say though that these tools were possibly sent down a shaft by priests during a ritual, and these items were supposed to help the deceased in the afterlife to eat and drink. Imagine having to pry your own mouth open every time to eat the never-ending buffet in the great beyond. That kinda sucks. I wish when I pass on, I get placed in a wicked-looking sarcophagus than the basic boxes we have. Look how awesome the designs are on these sarcophaguses. In the largest and oldest pyramid to exist, a pharaoh by the name of Khufu had only his exterior sarcophagus found in his tomb. Only the empty box that would have contained his actual casket with all his wonderful treasures. Apparently, someone had looted his tomb hundreds of years prior, despite the entrance of his resting grounds completely blocked by limestone. Khufu ruled in the 26th century based on research, and despite him still missing, it gives scientists valuable proof that he was buried. And not to mention the damage that was done on the exterior casket when looters came in and stole him. I'm so curious where it would be now, if it was passed down to family members, and if all his treasures are now cursed for being moved from their rightful place. A boat, we're not sinking, we're crashing. Despite him not being found in his own tomb, apparently one of his ships was found instead. Well, you lose some, you win some. This wonderful artifact was discovered on May 26, 1954 by archaeologist Kamal El Malach when he was digging just at the south side of Khufu's Great Pyramid. This boat was also not put together though when it was discovered, or if it was put together at all in the first place, forcing researchers to teach themselves how to build this thing, with 1,224 pieces of it from scratch. It's kind of hilarious though, honestly, having your pharaoh build his own boat in the afterlife. This boat is apparently 46,000 years old and 44 meters long, and it's so well done in terms of design that researchers believe that they could toss this thing in the Nile and it would sail perfectly. As to why it was built though, it's been speculated that this boat would have been used to allow the pharaoh to sail across the heavens with the sun god Ra, calling it the solar barge. Passing on and getting to ride your own ship across the sky with a god? Sign me up. I'm not surprised that the rules of three travel way back when. This Triad statue was found in the smaller pyramid in 1908, the pyramid of Menkaure, and discovered by George Andrew Reisner. The three people it consists of are as follows: Menkaure himself, the goddess Hathor, who was a mother and or consort of sky god Horus and sun god Ra, and a personified version of a gnome that the pharaoh had control over at the time. Researchers say that this statue is so important because it gives us a glimpse at the true artistry that existed in ancient Egypt. They also find it strikingly interesting that the pharaoh himself is not placed in the middle of this piece, but rather at the right hand side of the goddess, while she instead takes the middle. It shows how pharaohs find themselves almost as equals to deities when it comes to power. And I'm also speculating that by creating this statue, Ra would give Menkaure a much easier time crossing over to the heavens. Not scientifically proven, just my guess of it. I would do the same too to gain a god's favor with safe travels. This statue was also found during the same expedition as the Triad statue, but in 1910, and consists of Menkaure and this time his wife. It was made out of the same material, being sandstone, and is apparently almost life-size, with it measuring 4.5 feet tall. Finally, something I could talk about where I can tower over it. Both of these statues found were in extremely well off shape, with the only intriguing difference of this statue was that the bottom half was left unpolished. Is it possible during this time Menkaure passed on while it was being constructed? Obviously, this statue was made to symbolize the absolute power couple dynamic they had going on, being both king and queen. I mean, come on, if you were king, wouldn't you also do the same? Although mine personally would be a Renaissance painting. Let's give a little bit of love to the second largest pyramid now, the Pyramid of Khafre. He probably has my favorite statue on this list because aside from the power couple one, this is the ultimate power move as a king. This statue was also not made out of the same sandstone like the others, but instead a single piece of diorite, and is actually much harder to sculpt out of. This statue was discovered in 1858 and entails the pharaoh himself on his throne, with two lions on either side of his legs, himself decked out in traditional pharaoh attire, ceremonial beard, headdress, a royal pleated skirt, even with a royal cobra next to him, and not to mention the god Horus himself behind him taking the shape of a bird. The details of the statue are quite insane with the choice of material used, and the way the rock itself has its own little quirks of stripes all along the structure. Would y'all ever pay money to have yourself carved onto a throne? Hieroglyphs, also known as sacred carving or the god's words. We all know about hieroglyphs, at least my basic knowledge comes from the iconic animated film Prince of Egypt. Absolute phenomenal pieces of work. Today, these are still being questioned, but right now scientists are going with the idea that hieroglyphic symbols may actually be literal with their pictures, but can also instead be understood as a particular sound or groups of sounds. When you actually look into what the symbols might mean in terms of letters, it gets weird. One reed leaf means I or J apparently, but two reed leaves mean Y? I don't know how they figured that out. All that's known right now is a couple of names and titles, with the rest of these markings being completely unreadable when trying to look at what it all means together. They are meant to show what ancient Egypt was like with day-to-day living, outside of when it's probably talking about gods and rituals. They show accomplishments and even personalities of the past kings. Khufu's pyramid apparently has a whole rundown about how he was as well. Khufu's pyramid is getting all the hype recently, especially between 2016 and 2017, when a void was discovered just above the Grand Gallery. If you don't know what the Grand Gallery is, it's basically a long passageway 47 meters long that has been suspected to make it easier for the builders to get the large stones on the upper levels. Archaeologists right now don't really have a specific clue as to why it exists, but since there is no way to actually get into the crevice as of right now, it was found with technology called muography, which allows an invasive way to scan the pyramids without, and I quote, blasting our way through the pyramid with powder, as British Egyptologist Howard Weiss did in the early 1800s, stated archaeologist Mark Lenner. Right now, the hypothesis is that the void, like others were found in the pyramid, were used as a space for builders to take resting periods in between the traveling and not be crushed by the pressure. But because of how drastically different in size this void is, and its placement on the pyramid, they don't want to rule out it just yet from being something much more interesting. I'm definitely going to be keeping up with this story because maybe Khufu was hidden there instead, knowing ahead of time of some potential looters? As Indy said, X never ever marks the spot. Please comment down below some interesting facts that you know about the Great Pyramids, along with subscribing and liking the video. Stay creepy, my crawlies.
Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Want to see more videos like this one? Click this video next. We found some ancient Egyptian secrets that were only revealed to us this past year. Click the video now. What are you waiting for?